Widely considered the wealthiest man in the world and the Elon Musk of the 1980s, this is Saudi Arabian businessman Adnan Khashoggi. He died at the age of 81 in 2017. He is the uncle of slain Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Ostensibly while shopping for Persian rugs in the Persian rug capital of the world, Hamburg, Germany, in 1985, Adnan Khashoggi met this European-based Iranian businessman, Manucher Ghorbanifar. It turns out that Ghorbanifar actually worked in the service of the Iranian Shah's brutal intelligence agency, SAVAK, up until the Shah's ousting in 1979, and then after that, under the Ayatollah Khomeini, he continued supposedly to serve in Iranian intelligence. Ghorbanifar knew Israeli military attaché to Tehran, Yaakov Nimrodi, pictured here. Although officially an Israeli military attaché to Tehran, Nimrodi reportedly helped the Shah build the SAVAK. So since then, some journalists have reportedly mislabeled him as a suspected Mossad agent, or was he unofficial Mossad the whole time? Nimrodi in turn was childhood friends with Yitzhak Navon, who would become Israel's fifth prime minister. Navon actually recruited Nimrodi at the age of 16 in 1942 into Haganah's intelligence service before Israel even became a nation-state. Working in Middle Eastern intelligence services in the Cold War, Nimrodi would eventually become an insanely wealthy businessman, just like Manucher Ghorbanifar, and like Adnan Khashoggi, who eventually became the wealthiest man in the world in the 80s. Nimrodi departed Iran in 1979 after the Shah was ousted and the Ayatollah Khomeini came into power. On December 8, 1986, Manucher Ghorbanifar and Adnan Khashoggi granted exclusive interviews to Barbara Walters of 2020. Barbara Walters and her 2020 crew interviewed Khashoggi in the lounge of one of his 3 luxury, commercial-sized private jets. Khashoggi also owned several yachts, one of which was the Nabila, which was eventually sold to Donald Trump from 1987 to 1991, and it's currently owned by Saudi Prince El Walid bin Talal. Don't worry, no, Nabila is not the Arabic equivalent of Lolita. Barbara Walters and the 2020 crew flew aboard Khashoggi's airplane from New York's Kennedy Airport to Nice, France, where Khashoggi had a really nice apartment. There, she interviewed Manucher Ghorbanifar. By the way, Khashoggi initiated contact with Barbara Walters on this and said, perhaps you'd like to do an interview with us, and it was going to regard the role Khashoggi and Ghorbanifar played in the Iran-Contra scandal. Now, this interview that's partially limited hangout or cover-up made Khashoggi out to be like a multi-billionaire jet-setting playboy, but not really malicious or nefarious. It made Ghorbanifar out to be mysterious, vague, maybe a little bit slippery or sleazy, but not truly criminal. Overall, the interview covers how they basically got together eventually with Reagan-era National Security Council figures such as Robert McFarlane, Michael Ledeen, and Oliver North. Reportedly, the original video for this interview is not available to the public, and this CIA transcript of the interview was not declassified and made available to the public until 2010. For a 1986 interview on 2020, Director of Central Intelligence in the 80s, William Casey, claimed that the CIA had put out an official burn notice on Ghorbanifar not to trust him as a source as early as 1984. The CIA warned that Ghorbanifar is a fabricator. On December 6, 1981, the New York Times broke a story titled, "The Nation in Summary, Libyan-Trained Assassin Squad Reported in the U.S." A Libyan hit squad reportedly entered the U.S. the week before and was suspected to have been trained by retired CIA and Green Berets. I'll get to that story in another post because that's a whole other story. The obviously trusted informant of that information at that time was none other than Manucher Ghorbanifar. He reported first-hand information to either French DST, Israeli Mossad, U.S. intelligence or national security personnel, or somebody else that was trusted at the national security level that Libya's Gaddafi had a hit squad out to assassinate President Ronald Reagan. Federal law enforcement officials were cited in the New York Times article as having revealed the information to them through this trusted informant. Reagan himself said he took the threat seriously, and the news ran with the story. Khashoggi and Ghorbanifar explained to Barbara Walters and or others in subsequent interviews that much of their effort was to create a positive relationship between the United States and Iran. And Khashoggi went on to say that Ghorbanifar supposedly wanted to create peace and stability throughout the Middle East because, quote, all of the Muslim brothers were fighting each other, end quote. Ghorbanifar eventually admitted in 1986 that he made the whole Libyan hit squad up and that he did it because Gaddafi and Libya were enemies of Israel. The scenario and timeline of Ghorbanifar and Khashoggi is significant for many obvious national and security reasons in light of the situation in the Middle East, the CIA historical meddling in the region, coups, the Iran-Contra scandal, the Lebanese Civil War, U.S. Marines and other military personnel killed in 1983, multiple other additional attacks on U.S. embassies, the kidnapping of U.S. personnel to include the CIA station chief in Lebanon, William F. Buckley, in 1984, the Iran-Iraq War, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, current events throughout the Middle East and North Africa, and more. The Ghorbanifar-Khashoggi Iran-Contra timeline is important to understand fully here because Ghorbanifar is now ultimately listed in history as the source of the Libyan hit squad hoax. And despite CIA Director William Casey's claiming that the CIA issued a burn notice on Ghorbanifar in 1984, the U.S. National Security Council appears to have continued knowingly working with him through at least early 1986. U.S. hostages in Iran were released in 1981. The Iran-Contra scheme, by contrast, is linked to efforts to go through Iran for the release of U.S. hostages held by Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran needed weapons to wage war against Iraq. When the Ayatollah Khomeini came in 1979, Saddam Hussein, linked to the CIA, came into power into Iraq. And the U.S. was supporting Saddam Hussein as well, but they were supporting Iran covertly, so they were basically supporting both sides. The parallel timing of these two revolutionary transitions, the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran and Saddam Hussein in Iraq, set the stage for the Iran-Iraq war, with the U.S. supporting both sides for some time. The original source of Western media's recent news that Iran has supposedly raised $40 million, supposedly to pay assassins a blood covenant to eliminate Donald Trump, is a website called Tha'ar.ir, which was just created July 2nd, a few days after the June 29th supposed fatwa or Islamic command of the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. From 1979 to 1989, the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, was the president, and Ghorbanifar was supposedly still working in Iranian intelligence under Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi. Without much additional checking, Western media ran with this story. Are we seeing haunts from the ghost of Ghorbanifar? And ironically, or perhaps not so ironically, my initial post on this here was initially blocked, reportedly for misinformation.